Hi there, folks. Forgive me, I have the hiccups. It's a terrible time to go live. However, let's see if we can fit this in the screen a bit better. There we go. I just thought it was a good time as any to hop on, and I'm doing a little bit of exploration on one of the districts for Nomas, which, if you don't know, is our currently live backer kit campaign. It's a city/rule supplement for Draw Steel. And one of the many things in it, including ancestries, factions, and various other bits and pieces, monsters, is districts. And one of the districts is called the Periphery. And I think I just had the map up here a second ago. There we go. There we go. So this is what we're working with map-wise. Which I realize you guys can't see. So I know the easiest way to show it. There we go. There we go. So in the preview documents for the campaign, you can see Ream's Tiers as a district, and you learn about the different locations: Glass Fair, Market Pond, and the Reef. I've got the Ember Ward over here, but I'm interested in looking at the Periphery. So the Periphery is a undead district, not a million miles from the dead city and capital, and it's home to mostly revenants, vampires, sentient undead for the most part. And the kind of balance there between sentient undead and other undead is something we're going to explore. Maybe not necessarily tonight, but generally. The Gate of Wrath is the portal through which the undead came to settle in the city, and it leads to the Abyssal Waste, which I have definitely got notes on somewhere, but potentially not where they're supposed to be. So I shall have to look for that as well. But here's what I know so far. I know that the representative of the Periphery is Alaric Roth, who is a vampire lord. The demographics mostly sentient undead. Notable figures we'll come back to. That's part of filling out this section. Notable locations, we have Kirtara, which is the giant castle, basically, which is probably going to be the seat of Alaric Roth. We have the Gate, which is the Gate of Wrath. I like to have each district have a city defence, something that they alone can do and they bring to the table when the city's under threat, and probably something to do with compromising their morals and raising a whole bunch of bodies as undead. Or maybe something a bit different, but that's a good one. What are the value? This was from much earlier draft. We didn't really keep values in, but it's good to know. Knowledge, liberty, civil rights, justice. What trades they do? Well, history, therapy, labour force, communications. Again, kind of things that make sense for undead, and telepaths, and things that are a little bit against type. What is the main sort of psionics you get here? Telepathy. They're very against slavery, preserving knowledge. That's an interesting tension. And we've got a faction here that we can use. Now, I've got over on my other screen, I've got a bit of our campaign doc, which I'm going to keep close just now. But somewhere along it, I definitely talked about a little bit more about the district. So I want to see if I can find that. There we go. There we go. So this is a little bit of the ancestry section where I talk about revenants and what traits they can get from being in the city, so I'll stick that in here. This is just a bit about the Periphery that I have taken from that ancestry section. So they're not one people, but there remains in many peoples. The members of a thriving community in the Periphery, and they originally came from the Abyssal Waste. Well, after they died. So fleeing demons found their way to Necropolitan Ruin, only to be enslaved by Korsketh Ultralich, and when the Gate of Wrath appeared, it disrupted the control he had over a bunch of these revenants, vampires, and things, and kind of their souls allowed them to flee. But by that time, loads of them had escaped. But that's why it's a very strong kind of calling or vocation among the sort of undead in the periphery, is to free others from either Korskev's control or other control. So, for example, yes, you might see vampires and revenants walking around. You're probably not going to see a lich, or more accurately, a necromancer, so someone who controls the undead. But it's something I'm interested in playing around with a little bit. So, for example, the Summoner's now out, although it's not open. So potentially, as a summoner necromancer, is that a thing you get in the periphery, or is it a thing that's very taboo in the periphery? Because they don't really mess with souls; they kind of use their own soul to summon spirits. But it might just be for them that's close enough, and they don't like it. So this is the guts of what I've got. The other thing I have that may tie in here is I have a creature called Valyrian Deer, which is an Underdark deer. This is from a 5e version a long time ago. And it's a magic item that's brought out of this. But the deer, I'm not entirely clear if they are tended by the undead or by the night elves. So who are over in the rookery over here. Now, Nomas as it stands does not have these walls. It's a bit more expanded out. So you actually, in this sort of white space, or dark space, you get like farms and things in the rest of the cavern. But I think one of the primary kind of, I think vocations in this is probably in this district is like farmers and things. So like labour, you've probably got these sort of a faction that's about freeing other undead who are trapped. And then I think you've got a major role as like soldier. Like there's a lot of active soldiers, probably more active soldiers in the periphery than any other district. But they're at any one time, most of them are engaged down here fighting demons who are coming through the gate. If anyone's read the Dresden Files, there's a point in that series, spoilers, where you discover that there's these two warring factions who are always equally balanced, and then you find out one's actually massively more powerful than the rest, or than the other. But you learn that they have that power for a specific purpose, and they have to use it to defend reality, basically. So, how are we doing? Okay. Good. So, what do I need to know? Well, one of the things, I'm just going to see where inspiration comes from here. One of the things I'll put some history there, just so we know where this came from. So, one of the things I was thinking about doing that might make it interesting to explore is to ask myself, what adventure could you play in this? Or it doesn't have to be, maybe like a quest. So I know in Ream's Tears I used a few different elements to come up with an adventure. So if I was writing an adventure for this district, which again this is not something that would be in the book, it's just inspiration, I would want to have interference from another district or faction. I would also want central tension of the district. I think, not that it's the only thing going on here, but one of the more interesting things here is defend the gate. So what I mean by that is, I would imagine you get quite a lot of... So, when demons come charge through the gate, they're a very clear threat. You fight them, you beat them, done. But you probably find as well that a lot of... Or one of the things that can happen is these sort of invisible, silent, not hordes of them, but like slightly more powerful demons or spirits can sneak through, and they try and cause chaos that will cause the whole thing to collapse. So they try and corrupt people or control them, or they try and hatch schemes that will mean ultimately that the defense of the gate fails. So I think as well a tension of this district is probably tension between freedom and authoritarian security. Hopefully I'll remember what that means. How heavily must we be policed and monitored to protect us from hidden threats? Now, the freedom versus authority is something I'm exploring in other districts as well. So the Ember Ward is a lot about, devils are typically associated with law, but there's a faction of anarchists, and it's about the kind of the fight there. But that's more about we want to be free, versus we have loads and loads of rules. This is more, in order to keep everyone safe, we have to basically be a police state, I think. So, who are the people who are important? And we'll title this up. Alaric Roth is important. He is the Vampire Lord, Supreme Leader, if you will. Again, I think that's another interesting tension, where he is both he's the supreme single leader in charge of a district that values freedom, not necessarily democracy. And you can see a bit about Alaric Roth in the Vampire write-up for the Vampire Ancestry. So we know we have Alaric Roth. So if he's Supreme Leader, politician, powerful telepath, he probably stays in charge through some what arcane means or tradition. And ancient rites keep in place. That's more like people are welcome to challenge him, but he's been doing this so long. There's rules and there's traditions that have to be followed. Someone wants to challenge him, they have to kind of do it formally. It's almost like a duel, and he's the biggest and baddest, so he stays in charge. And that should be, for us, a interesting conflict where if these guys are all about not being enthralled to someone, why do they have one solitary leader? But if he's doing that, I don't get the sense he's a general per se. So I think we have a general figure who's probably not a vampire. They're a revenant. They used to policing or defending the district, either against the new warden, so the gates have wardens assigned to them at this point in time in the history of the city, or very glad for the help. I'm actually leaning towards the latter. General and warden are friends. Now, for Ream's Tears, I have basically a political leader, another political leader, and then the warden. For this, I kind of like the idea of maybe not doing the warden and putting in someone who represents an opposing route to Alaric Roth. So who is there that kicks around and thinks, I could do this better than him, he doesn't need to be in charge? Now, for sentient undead souls, I'm thinking vampires, revenants. I'm not sure how I feel about mummies. There is a mummy lord in Nomas. I'm just not convinced that that's not something that everyone dislikes. I think that might be something that is just like mummies are villains, I think. I'm not sure if the core rules actually say whether mummies have souls. I'm assuming at some point it denotes what creatures do and don't. Or is it just that the war dogs are soulless and demons are soulless? If I go to undead, and you guys can't see this, but so let's see, soul. Oh yeah, so it confirms. So zombies are soulless, skeletons are soulless, claws are, so spirits specifically are not, so a shade is not, ghouls aren't soulless, okay. Spectres are not, soul wights are not, umbo-stalkers are not, zombies are, ghosts are not. Yeah, so all the way down. So I like the idea of ghosts being a faction, so maybe a ghost opponent to the vampire leader. So this says mummies do have souls. Okay. That's alright. So mummies and ghosts. Now them are ancestries we have in the book. But let's do it. So vampires, revenants, mummies, ghosts. So maybe the mummy that's entombed is one of the previous notable figures. But for now, we probably have a ghost. Alternatively there. To Alaric. But maybe there's something weird where she can't actually challenge him, or maybe she just wouldn't because she's not a combatant. But yeah, more words than might. Okay. Let's see. I like the idea of Napoleonic feel. Once a great living general from Orden. I don't think everyone has to necessarily have a specific callback to where they were in life, but that's, I feel like if she's, maybe Killian. Or something like that. Killian. Gaul, maybe. Okay. Ghost of whom? Doesn't matter. Maybe Ghost of someone who's born in the city. One who's never known hardship except their own murder or death, leaving unfinished business. Okay, so that helps me there. And let's see, what else? So we normally have a bit about district description and an origin, how it's run. Take those headers, a little bit about the kind of culture there, notable demographics, and persons of interest, and then locations. So let's see, so let's do landmarks. Let's do persons of interest. Let's do notable demographics. Then let's lift some of these same headlines. So we've probably got running the periphery, okay, this is going to have governance, crime and justice. It doesn't have to have all the same headings, but it's a good place to start. and then probably defense. Because a lot of this is covered in the Life and Nomas section anyway. But there we go. So that's something. Global demographics. It will be listed somewhere, but from the top of my head, majority population, revenants. I think the next one's is not it's a minority. Population. Vampires or ghosts? I feel like I like vampires being a little bit more exclusive. No, I'm gonna put vampires because I like the idea of covens of vampires. An enclave of mummies. Ghosts. I like the idea of ghosts being individuals, maybe. That's it. The implications of a quantity. So I like to imagine there's probably a lot of ghostly residents. So we're going to go for ghosts here just now. Excuse me. Oh dear. Okay. So let's make this a bit tighter. Probably left that just now. So I'm happy just to kind of take the high level view here and go and put detail in later, because in theory things like this will inspire me with things to write. For example, I think the mummies will be a specific group. I know there's a cult. I don't think all the mummies in the district will be in the cult, but I think it's probably like a community. I feel like mummies are maybe very specific parts of history that they're from, or a specific way they're made, compared to other creatures. Okay. Governance. So who runs the city? So Alaric Roth is the... I think Supreme Leader has a lot of connotations other than so to invoke. Sole Ruler. Periphery. He maintains this position through a mix of power and politics. Bureaucracy in the periphery. Undertaken by a civil service. We're just exploring here, this will make all be madness, but so Alaric assigns his lieutenants, we'll call them for now, task which they delegate to their lieutenants and so on until things are done. How they're done So this is lieutenants, a task with it. Simply assigns his lieutenant a task. They delegate to the lieutenants and so on until things are done. How they're done isn't important. Okay. Double isn't. Counter to this. So this is a form of, this is not really a form of democracy. Counter to this. This ghost person believes in a more democratic process. Maybe there isn't a big bureaucracy. Maybe maybe like small state. Maybe bureaucracy's kept small, yeah. But I'll write the idea out just now and I'll come back to this. So, small state, Alaric, ghost, large state. Okay. Yeah. They would hold elections and make bureaucrats accountable to the civilian population, to the populace. Don't have to say this is a she, but I have. I love doing things like this because it takes you to places where you never thought you'd go. I didn't know I was going to sit down and talk about unions with the undead. However, I like it, and you know, this might be a deep cut, and we don't need to know this for the book, but it's good to have an idea that's in there. Trying to win popular support for democracy. I think I'll do. Crime is periphery society is somewhat anarchical when it comes to crime. Civilians often take matters into their own hands or bring an issue to their R&B, because I feel like it's like almost like a series of fiefdoms. So like Alaric runs the district, like it's all his fief, but then his lieutenants all have their own little bits and so on and so forth. So it's almost like a very feudal system. So let's just say feudal. Lord who adjudicates disputes. Citizens of the periphery are never incarcerated for their crimes. I think just maybe even criminals in the periphery. Are rarely incarcerated. Instead, they are ordered to make good if possible, or pay with their lives. It's always the wall. It's always an option to, we're going to call it take the black, and serve time. I've indentured it. We're getting back to the slavery angle, which we don't want to do, but and serve in the defence instead. Call it the gate. Defence of the gate instead. Always an option. So yeah, so if you're in the periphery, you actually don't want to be imprisoned, you'd rather die. So you either choose to take up the defence, which is, it's probably, again, you incentivise the behaviours you want. If there is crime, then they're not going to incentivise you to go to prison. It's, you could die, or you can have a chance to live, but go fight in defence of the district. So I think that's solid. Let's see, there's not a formal watch. Official watch. Investigation and capture. That's what police forces do, they don't arbitrate anyway. So it's important in the district where tensions run high, and so the gate's constantly under attack, so you can't and distractions, yeah. Okay, that covers it. How do you defend it? So, I think there's probably some kind of, we don't allow this, but in the direst need we do. Because if it's... Sorry. Oh my. If it's more to do with the people coming back, they're already back from the dead, that's kind of, they are back. That's how they're, serving beyond death. I think it's, we don't allow the controlling of undead unless it's direst need. So maybe... to have a better idea. So it's not about people donating bodies either, because I think that's what happens in another one of the districts. I think it is probably just maybe some kind of machine. The Tomb Keepers, we call it, but it's not their name. Enact the Rising, where specific rituals are activated that raise the city's dead. This is one idea. What do you call it? Redundancies built into these rituals that prevent the long-term control of the dead, or national service. There are no children. It's better. I like that better. I could just couch it in better language, I think. No. It's not... We can call it the faction. I think the faction that ties into this district, it doesn't have to be here. That's how we do factions. It's not, one district, one faction. But I think the one that I want to focus on is probably like, hunters of... Let's see. Yeah, these guys. I think I had some ideas for them in the faction section, but I'm not sure what I wrote down. I thought I wrote down some kind of hunting faction. Apparently not. But yeah, some kind of organisation designed to hunt these bad guys. Okay. Landmarks. So this isn't necessarily all have to be my ideas, but I think of Kirtara as definitely one. Seat of power. Political and actual. What else would be important in the District of Undead? I wonder if there's the farms. That's important to the heroes, so I don't know. What would you go to? Yeah, this is where we start thinking like the adventure again and think like what would we put into an adventure? And what people players actually want from this kind of district. Why would you come here? So you might come here to negotiate with the leader. You might come here for some kind of telepathic location. Okay, that kind of thing. So that's a couple. Maybe there's some kind of famous farmers market that players can visit, get buy steed and stuff. Farmers market, buy steeds, etc. And labor, warriors, and the other one which I forgot what I said. So they take care of manual labour, they take care of defending the district. There's another one I mentioned which has gone out of my brain entirely. It's part of the labour force, part of the warrior force, or bureaucracy? Nah, don't know exactly. But that's probably enough for now. That's enough to move on with, and I can start really just writing it out and extending it. So I think that might be us. I think we'll tie in telepathy a bit more heavily, and then focus on these kind of things. But it is much more vibes based at this point, and then once we get into actual writing, it starts to be more of a case of can this all fit in? Does it balance with what we said about other districts and so on? But anyway, this is just a very quick video going over kind of the process of expanding this out from base ideas to something a bit more like with what we've got here. I can write most of the district entry. The adventure is not something we actually have to do, and it's just more nailing the culture and stuff and what's important to the people in the periphery through here. But yeah, with that in mind,